The skies above New York City shimmered with an unnatural glow as a massive alien vessel descended from the heavens. People poured out of buildings, their eyes wide with wonder, phones in hand to capture every moment. The air buzzed with excitement and fear, a mix of emotions that rippled through the crowd like waves. No one had ever seen anything like it before. The ship was enormous, its surface smooth and metallic, reflecting sunlight in strange patterns that made it look almost alive. It hovered silently, casting a shadow over the city, and for a moment time seemed to stop. Among the crowd stood Ryan Carter, a journalist who had been covering local events when the alien ship appeared. His heart raced as he adjusted his camera, trying to get a better angle. Beside him was Claire Dawson, a scientist specializing in xenobiology. She had been called to the scene by government officials, her expertise needed if this truly was humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial life. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her notebook, torn between awe and professional curiosity. The alien ship remained still for what felt like hours, though it was only minutes. Then, without warning, a low hum filled the air. It was not loud, but it resonated deeply, making people's chests vibrate. A section of the ship began to shift, panels sliding apart to reveal a smaller craft within. This secondary vessel detached smoothly, descending toward Central Park like a feather, caught in a gentle breeze. The crowd followed, some running ahead while others hung back, unsure whether this was safe or wise. When the smaller craft landed, there was no explosion, no smoke, just a soft thud as it touched the ground. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, a hatch opened and figures emerged. They were tall and slender, their bodies covered in translucent skin that shimmered faintly, almost like water. Their movements were graceful, deliberate, as if every step was part of a carefully choreographed dance. At the front of the group stood one figure who seemed different from the rest. She, or at least that was how most people perceived her, was taller, her presence commanding. Her voice echoed softly, translated into broken English on nearby devices. "We come in peace," she said, "to share knowledge and wonders." The word sent a ripple through the crowd. Cheers erupted, and some people even cried tears of joy. Others remained cautious, whispering among themselves about what this could mean. Ryan quickly snapped photos, his mind racing with questions. What did they want? Why now? And what kind of knowledge were they offering? Claire, meanwhile, stepped forward, her scientific training kicking in. She observed everything, their posture, their expressions, the way they interacted with each other, and jotted down notes furiously. The leader of the aliens introduced herself as Zinara. Her voice carried a calm authority, and though her appearance was alien, there was something strangely relatable about her demeanor. She gestured for several humans to approach, and after a brief hesitation, Ryan and Claire found themselves walking toward the group. Security personnel tried to intervene, but Zinara raised a hand and they froze mid-step, unable to move. After a moment, they regained control, shaken but unharmed. Zinara led them inside the smaller craft, which was unlike anything Ryan or Claire had ever seen. The interior wall shifted and changed color, responding to their presence. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing images of distant galaxies, strange creatures, and advanced technology. Zinara explained that her species, the Valith, had traveled across the stars, seeking civilizations to uplift. They believed Earth was ready for such guidance, and they intended to share their knowledge freely. Claire listened intently, asking questions whenever Zinara paused. She wanted to understand their biology, their culture, their history. Ryan, however, noticed something odd. As Zinara spoke, her gaze kept drifting to the screens of nearby devices held by other humans. News feeds played constantly, showing footage of Earth's military might. Battleships patrolling oceans, fighter jets roaring through the skies, satellites orbiting the planet. Each time these images appeared, Zinara's expression changed subtly. Her calm demeanor faltered, replaced by something akin to unease. At first, Ryan dismissed it as paranoia. These beings were clearly far more advanced than humanity. Why would they care about Earth's weapons? But as the tour continued, the tension grew. Zinara's gestures became sharper, her tone less welcoming. When Claire mentioned humanity's focus on both science and defense, Zinara interrupted her, her voice firm. Defense? She asked. Or aggression? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Zinara exchanged glances with her companions, their translucent skin rippling in unison. Without another word, she ended the tour and escorted Ryan and Claire back outside. The mood had shifted entirely. Gone was the warmth and curiosity. In its place was a cold distance that left everyone uneasy. As the alien craft lifted off and returned to the mothership, Ryan turned to Claire, his brow furrowed. "Do you think we scared them?" he asked quietly. Claire didn't answer right away. She stared up at the massive ship hovering above the city, her mind racing. Something told her this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Days passed, and the initial excitement of the alien arrival began to fade. The Valith had not made further contact after their abrupt departure from Central Park. People returned to their routines, though the massive ship still loomed in the sky, a constant reminder that Earth was no longer alone. News outlets debated endlessly about what the aliens might be planning, but without any new information, speculation ran rampant. Some believed the Valith were preparing to share incredible gifts with humanity. Others feared they were plotting something sinister. Ryan Carter struggled to focus on his work. As a journalist, he knew this story could define his career, but the lack of updates left him frustrated. He spent hours reviewing footage from the encounter, analyzing every word Zinara had said and every gesture she had made. Something about her reaction to Earth's military displays gnawed at him. Why had those images unsettled her so much? He replayed the moment in his mind, trying to piece together what it meant. Claire Dawson, meanwhile, was summoned to a series of meetings with government officials. They wanted her input on how to handle the situation, especially since she had been one of the few humans to interact directly with the Valith. Claire explained what she had observed: their advanced technology, their apparent curiosity about Earth, and their sudden shift in behavior when confronted with images of human warfare. She emphasized that the Valith seemed to misunderstand humanity's dual focus on progress and defense. To them, it appeared as though Earth prioritized violence over cooperation. The officials listened carefully, but Claire could tell they were more concerned with potential threats than cultural misunderstandings. Military leaders were already preparing for the worst-case scenario. Lieutenant Daniel Hayes, a naval officer stationed off the coast of New York, received orders to move his fleet closer to the city. His flagship, the USS Invincible, led a group of battleships equipped with cutting-edge weaponry designed to counter unknown threats. Though confident in their capabilities, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that humanity might be walking into a trap. Back in New York, Ryan decided to dig deeper. He reached out to contacts in the scientific community, hoping to find someone who could shed light on the Valith's motives. One physicist suggested that the aliens might view Earth's militarization as a sign of instability. "Think about it," the physicist said. "If you encountered a species that spent as much time building weapons as it did exploring space, wouldn't you be cautious?" Ryan wrote an article based on the conversation, framing the Valith's reaction as a misunderstanding rather than a threat. It gained traction online, sparking debates across social media. Some readers agreed with the perspective, arguing that humanity needed to present itself as peaceful and cooperative. Others dismissed the idea, claiming that Earth couldn't afford to appear weak in front of a superior species. Tensions escalated when strange activity was detected near Earth's orbit. Satellites picked up movements suggesting the Valith fleet was mobilizing. At first, the changes were subtle: shifts in positioning, increased energy readings. But soon, it became clear that something was happening. Governments around the world went on high alert, scrambling to prepare for whatever came next. In New York, emergency sirens blared, urging citizens to seek shelter. The city streets emptied quickly as people rushed indoors, their earlier awe replaced by fear. Ryan and Claire found themselves called to another meeting, this time with higher-ranking officials. They were briefed on the latest developments and asked to provide insights based on their experience with the Valith. Claire reiterated her belief that the aliens were reacting out of fear rather than hostility. "They don't understand us," she said. "To them, our weapons might look like tools of conquest, not protection." The officials weren't convinced. "Even if that's true," one of them replied, "we can't take chances. If they attack, we need to be ready." Claire nodded reluctantly, knowing there was truth in the statement. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was missing an opportunity to bridge the gap between species. As the days dragged on, the situation grew increasingly tense. The Valith finally broke their silence, broadcasting a message that played on every television and radio station worldwide. Zinara's voice echoed calmly, though there was a sharp edge to her words. "Your kind has shown us your power," she said. "We came seeking peace, but we see now that you are too dangerous to trust. You build machines of war while claiming to desire harmony. This contradiction cannot stand." The announcement sent shockwaves through the global population. Protests erupted in cities around the world, with some groups demanding immediate action against the Valith and others pleading for diplomacy. Ryan covered the chaos, capturing scenes of anger and desperation. He interviewed people on the streets, asking how they felt about the alien ultimatum. Most expressed fear, but a few voiced hope that communication could still prevail. Claire worked tirelessly behind the scenes, consulting with linguists and xenobiologists to craft a response. She believed that if humanity could explain its complexities, if it could show the Valith that war wasn't the only defining aspect of their culture, there might still be a chance for peace. But time was running out. The Valith had begun targeting key military installations, disabling radar systems and disrupting communications networks. Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the USS Invincible, watching as enemy ships descended toward Earth. His crew worked frantically to track their movements and prepare defenses. He thought about his wife, Emily, who was stationed at NORAD, coordinating efforts to monitor the alien fleet. They exchanged brief messages, each promising to stay safe. Daniel knew the odds were against them, but he refused to give up. Humanity had faced impossible challenges before, and it had always found a way to endure. In the midst of the growing crisis, Ryan received a call from an unexpected source, a former colleague who claimed to have intercepted a transmission from the Valith. The message contained fragments of their language, untranslated but accompanied by visual data. Ryan forwarded the information to Claire, who immediately recognized its significance. Hidden within the visuals were glimpses of the Valith's history, images of their own wars, their struggles for survival, and their eventual rise to dominance. It was proof that they weren't so different from humans after all. Claire realized this could be the key to averting disaster. If humanity could demonstrate that its capacity for conflict was matched by its ability to create, to heal, and to grow, perhaps the Valith would reconsider their stance. She shared her findings with Ryan, and together, they devised a plan. Using the intercepted data, they would compile a message showcasing Earth's greatest achievements, not just its weapons, but its art, science, and resilience. It was a long shot, but it might be the only way to prevent total annihilation. As the clock ticked down, Ryan and Claire worked side by side, piecing together the presentation that could save the world. Outside, the skies darkened with the promise of battle. Inside, hope flickered like a fragile flame waiting to be reignited. The skies above Earth erupted into chaos as the Valith launched their first strike. Precision beams of energy lanced down from their ships, targeting military bases and communication hubs. Explosions lit up the horizon, sending shock waves through nearby cities. The world watched in stunned silence as the alien fleet unleashed its power, each attack calculated to cripple humanity's ability to fight back. On the ground, people scrambled for safety, while soldiers mobilized to defend what remained. Lieutenant Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the USS Invincible, his jaw clenched as he surveyed the unfolding battle. His fleet was spread out across the Atlantic Ocean, positioned to intercept any incoming threats. The ship's radar systems screamed with warnings as enemy drones descended toward them. All hands, prepare for engagement, Daniel ordered, his voice steady despite the tension gripping him. Crew members rushed to their stations, their movements sharp and practiced. Railgun projectiles streaked through the air, slamming into the alien drones with thunderous impacts. For a moment it seemed like the humans had the upper hand. But the Veilith responded swiftly, their ships deploying swarms of smaller craft that overwhelmed the defenses. Missiles streaked upward, trailing smoke as they sought their targets. The Invincible shuddered under the force of a near miss, and alarms blared throughout the vessel. Daniel gripped the railing of the command deck, his mind racing. Humanity's technology was no match for the Veilith's precision and speed, but they had one advantage: ingenuity. Engineers aboard the fleet worked frantically to repurpose civilian satellites into makeshift weapons. These satellites, originally designed for navigation and weather monitoring, were reprogrammed to fire concentrated bursts of energy at the alien ships. It was a risky strategy, but it bought the fleet precious time. Meanwhile, on the ground, Ryan Carter and Claire Dawson continued their desperate attempt to assemble a message for the Veilith. They worked in a secure facility miles away from the fighting, surrounded by screens displaying intercepted transmissions and fragments of Earth's history. Ryan sifted through hours of footage, images of towering skyscrapers, breathtaking works of art, medical breakthroughs, and moments of human compassion. He knew this was their last chance to show the aliens that humanity was more than just its weapons. Claire focused on organizing the data into a coherent narrative. She included clips of scientists working in labs, teachers educating children, and volunteers helping those in need. She added recordings of music and poetry, hoping to convey the depth of human creativity. At the same time, she carefully avoided glorifying war or aggression. Every frame was chosen to reflect humanity's complexity, the good and the bad, the triumphs and the struggles. As they worked, news of the battle poured in. Fighter jets engaged in dogfights against alien ships, their pilots risking everything to protect their homes. In space, unmanned satellites armed with experimental particle beams attempted to disable the larger Veilith vessels. Though the odds were stacked against them, humanity fought with everything it had. Civilians tuned in to live broadcasts, praying for a miracle. Back on the Invincible, Daniel coordinated attacks with other ships in the fleet. He directed railgun fire toward the Veilith command ship, aiming for its exposed engines. The massive vessel listed slightly after a direct hit, and cheers erupted on the bridge. But the victory was short-lived. The Veilith retaliated with devastating force, obliterating 2 smaller battleships in a single volley. The loss was catastrophic, and Daniel felt the weight of every life extinguished in an instant. Amid the carnage, Emily Hayes, stationed at NORAD, monitored the situation remotely. Her role was to track the alien fleet's movements and relay critical information to the front lines. She communicated regularly with Daniel, her voice trembling as she updated him on the latest developments. "They're targeting population centers now," she reported. "We have to stop them before they reach the cities." Daniel nodded grimly. He knew what was at stake. If the Veilith reached New York, Los Angeles, or any major city, millions would die. He issued orders to regroup and launch a concentrated assault on the command ship. It was a suicide mission, but it might be the only way to turn the tide. As the fleet advanced, Daniel sent a final message to Emily. "Tell the kids I love them," he said, his voice breaking. Emily choked back tears, unable to respond. In the secure facility, Ryan and Claire finalized their presentation. They compressed the data into a single transmission, ensuring it could be broadcast directly to the Veilith fleet. Using hacked frequencies, they aimed the signal at Zainara's command ship, hoping it would reach her. The message began with images of Earth's beauty, rolling mountains, vast oceans, and lush forests. Then came scenes of human achievement, astronauts walking on the moon, surgeons performing life-saving operations, artists painting masterpieces. Finally, the transmission ended with a simple plea: "We are not your enemies." For a moment, there was no response. The battle raged on, humanity clinging to the hope that their message had been received. Then, unexpectedly, The Valith attacks slowed. Their ships hovered in place, their weapons silent. Across the globe, people held their breath, unsure whether this was a temporary pause or the beginning of something worse. Inside the command ship, Zenara watched the transmission with growing unease. The images stirred something deep within her, a recognition of shared pain and resilience. She saw reflections of her own species' journey in humanity's story. The wars they had fought, the losses they had endured, and the progress they had made, all of it resonated with her. For the first time, she questioned whether her initial assessment of humans had been correct. Zenara turned to her advisors, her expression conflicted. "Perhaps we were wrong," she admitted. "These beings are flawed, yes, but they are also capable of great things." Her words sparked debate among the crew, some arguing that the risk was too great, while others believed humanity deserved another chance. On Earth, the lull in fighting gave leaders a brief window to assess the situation. Ryan and Claire's message had reached Zenara, but its impact remained unclear. Would the Valith stand down, or was this merely a tactical delay? Military commanders prepared for the worst, reinforcing defenses and evacuating civilians from vulnerable areas. Yet amidst the uncertainty, a glimmer of hope emerged. Ryan and Claire stepped outside the facility, gazing up at the alien ships hanging motionless in the sky. The air was thick with anticipation, the world holding its collective breath. "Do you think it worked?" Ryan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Claire didn't answer right away. She looked at the horizon, where the first rays of dawn painted the clouds in hues of gold and pink. "I don't know," she said finally, "but we had to try." As the sun rose higher, the Valith fleet began to shift. Slowly, deliberately, the ships moved apart, creating a clear path in the sky. A new message played on global broadcasts, Zenara's voice calm but tinged with regret. "Your kind has shown us your truth," she said. "We will withdraw for now, but we will watch. Perhaps one day you will prove yourselves worthy of trust." The announcement brought mixed reactions. Some celebrated the reprieve, while others mourned the lives lost in the conflict. Ryan wrote about the events, capturing the tension and relief that swept across the planet. Claire returned to her research, determined to learn more about the Valith and their culture. And Daniel, still aboard the Invincible, allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection as the alien ships disappeared into the distance. Though the immediate threat had passed, humanity knew its future was forever changed. The encounter with the Valith had revealed both its strengths and weaknesses, forcing people to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. As the world began to rebuild, one question lingered in everyone's minds. What would happen next? The Valith fleet withdrew, disappearing into the vastness of space as quickly as it had arrived. The skies above Earth cleared, leaving behind an eerie silence that felt heavier than the chaos of battle. People emerged from shelters cautiously, their faces pale and eyes wide with disbelief. The warships that had once dominated the horizon were gone, but the scars of conflict remained: smoldering ruins, broken infrastructure, and countless lives lost. Despite the reprieve, no one felt truly safe. The message from Zenara echoed in their minds. "We will watch." Ryan Carter stood on a rooftop overlooking New York City, his camera hanging loosely around his neck. The streets below were eerily quiet, the usual hum of traffic replaced by the distant sound of cleanup crews sifting through debris. He had spent the past hours documenting the aftermath, capturing images of both destruction and resilience. Families reunited outside evacuation centers, soldiers patrolled empty neighborhoods, and volunteers worked tirelessly to restore power and water supplies. Humanity was picking up the pieces, but Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Claire Dawson sat at a desk in a makeshift command center, her laptop open to a live feed of satellite data. She studied the trajectory of the departing Valith ships, searching for patterns or clues about their next move. Though relieved that the immediate threat had passed, she knew the aliens' decision to leave didn't mean they trusted humanity. Their words carried a warning, one that governments around the world were scrambling to interpret. Claire had been asked to stay on as an advisor, helping military leaders understand the Valith's motives and technology. It was a daunting task, but she felt a responsibility to ensure humanity didn't make the same mistakes again. Lieutenant Daniel Hayes returned to shore after days at sea aboard the USS Invincible. His uniform was worn, his face lined with exhaustion, but he refused to rest until he knew his crew was safe and accounted for. Many had survived, but the losses weighed heavily on him. As he walked along the pier, Emily greeted him with a tight embrace, her tears soaking into his shoulder. They didn't speak much. There were no words to fully express what they had endured. Instead, they held each other, drawing strength from the simple fact that they were alive. In the days that followed, the world began to rebuild. Governments convened emergency summits to discuss how to prepare for future encounters with extraterrestrial life. Military budgets were increased, and scientists raced to reverse engineer fragments of alien technology recovered from the battlefield. Meanwhile, public sentiment shifted dramatically. Some called for unity, urging nations to work together to present a peaceful image to any potential visitors. Others demanded stronger defenses, convinced that the Valith would return. And next time, they might not be so merciful. Ryan wrote extensively about these debates, his articles sparking heated discussions online. He interviewed survivors, politicians, and experts, piecing together a narrative that highlighted humanity's fragility and determination. One story focused on a young boy who had saved his younger sister during an attack, carrying her through rubble to safety. Another profiled a scientist who had risked her life to retrieve data from a damaged satellite, providing critical insights into the Valith's weapon systems. Through his words, Ryan hoped to remind people of what truly mattered. Not fear or anger, but courage and compassion. Claire continued her research, collaborating with linguists and engineers to analyze every scrap of information intercepted from the Valith. She discovered that their language contained subtle nuances tied to emotions and intentions, suggesting they placed great value on understanding others. This revelation reinforced her belief that the Valith's initial hostility stemmed from a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. Armed with this knowledge, she proposed creating a permanent diplomatic team trained to communicate with alien species using non-aggressive methods. Her idea gained traction, though some dismissed it as naive. As weeks turned into months, life slowly returned to normal, or at least a new version of normal. Schools reopened, businesses resumed operations, and people tried to focus on the future rather than dwell on the past. Yet reminders of the encounter were everywhere. Memorials were erected to honor those who had died, and documentaries aired, nightly, recounting the events in vivid detail. The phrase "we will watch" became a cultural touchstone, inspiring everything from art exhibits to protest slogans. Despite the outward appearance of recovery, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire, fueled by rumors of secret government experiments involving alien tech. Protesters gathered outside military bases, demanding transparency and accountability. Hackers claimed to have uncovered classified files detailing plans for orbital defense platforms capable of targeting extraterrestrial threats. While some of these claims were exaggerated or outright false, they reflected a growing distrust of authority, a fear that humanity's leaders might provoke another conflict instead of preventing it. Amid the uncertainty, Ryan and Claire found themselves drawn back into the heart of the issue. A breakthrough came when Claire decoded a fragment of the Valith transmission that had gone unnoticed during the crisis. Hidden within the data was a map, not of Earth, but of nearby star systems. The coordinates pointed to regions where the Valith had previously encountered other civilizations. Claire realized this could be an opportunity to learn more about their history and motivations. She shared her findings with Ryan, who immediately recognized the significance. "This could change everything," Ryan said, his voice tinged with excitement. "If we can figure out where they've been, maybe we can understand why they acted the way they did." Claire nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "But we need to tread carefully," she cautioned. "If the Valith see us exploring, Their past without permission, they might take it as a threat. Together, they approached a coalition of scientists and diplomats working on long-term strategies for interstellar relations. Their proposal, to send unmanned probes to the mapped locations, was met with skepticism. Some argued it was too dangerous, while others believed it was necessary to gain insight into the Velith mindset. After lengthy negotiations, a compromise was reached. A single probe would be launched, equipped with sensors designed to gather non-invasive data. If successful, it could pave the way for further exploration. The mission took months to plan and execute. Engineers worked around the clock to construct the probe, incorporating elements of alien technology recovered during the battle. When the launch date arrived, Ryan and Claire watched anxiously from a control room as the countdown ticked away. The probe soared into the sky, its trajectory guided by precise calculations. For the first time in months, hope flickered in their hearts. As the probe traveled deeper into space, humanity waited for answers. Back on Earth, efforts to prevent future conflicts intensified. Educational programs promoted global cooperation, teaching children about the importance of empathy and diplomacy. Artists created murals depicting humans and aliens standing side by side, symbols of a brighter future. And in boardrooms and laboratories, discussions continued about how best to prepare for whatever lay ahead. For Ryan, the experience had changed him. He no longer saw himself simply as a journalist chasing headlines. He viewed his work as a bridge between worlds, a way to foster understanding even in the face of fear. Claire, too, felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her research had shown her that communication, true, honest communication, was humanity's greatest weapon against division and mistrust. One evening, as Ryan and Claire sat on a park bench watching the sunset, they reflected on all that had happened. The journey had been grueling, filled with moments of despair and triumph alike. But through it all, they had learned something invaluable. Humanity's strength didn't lie in its battleships or its bombs. It lay in its ability to adapt, to grow, and to reach out, even when faced with the unknown. Above them, the stars twinkled silently, indifferent to the struggles of the small planet below. Somewhere out there, the Velith watched, waiting to see what humanity would do next. And somewhere closer to home, a tiny probe drifted through the void, carrying the hopes of a species determined to prove it was worth a second chance. Months passed, and the probe sent into deep space began transmitting data back to Earth. The information was fragmented at first, a jumble of signals and images that required painstaking analysis. Scientists worked around the clock, piecing together clues about the Velith's history and their encounters with other civilizations. What they discovered was both fascinating and unsettling. The Velith had not always been peaceful explorers. They had once waged wars of their own, driven by fear and mistrust. Over time, they had evolved, learning to value cooperation over conflict. But the scars of their past remained, shaping how they viewed species like humanity. Claire Dawson pored over the findings, her eyes glued to screens filled with charts and diagrams. She saw parallels between the Velith's journey and humanity's current struggles. Both species had faced moments of crisis that forced them to choose between destruction and growth. For the Velith, those choices had led to enlightenment. For humans, the path forward was still uncertain. Claire knew this data could help bridge the gap between the two species, if it was shared wisely. Ryan Carter documented every step of the process, writing articles that explained the discoveries. In simple terms, he wanted people to understand the stakes without succumbing to panic or despair. His stories highlighted the similarities between humans and the Velith, emphasizing themes of resilience and change. Readers responded with a mix of curiosity and hope, eager to learn more about the beings who had once threatened their world. Some even reached out to Ryan, sharing personal reflections on how the encounter had changed their perspective. As the data accumulated, governments convened an international summit to discuss next steps. Leaders from every corner of the globe gathered in Geneva, determined to present a united front. Claire and Ryan were invited to attend, their insights deemed crucial to shaping humanity's response. In the Grand Hall, Delegates debated passionately, weighing the risks and benefits of reaching out to the Valith again. Some argued for caution, urging patience until more information could be gathered. Others believed the time for waiting was over, that humanity needed to take bold action if it hoped to secure its future. Claire addressed the assembly, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "We have learned much about the Valith," she said. "They are not monsters but survivors. They see us as dangerous because they do not fully understand us. It is our responsibility to show them the truth, not just our strength, but our capacity for peace." Her words resonated with many, though skepticism lingered. A compromise was eventually reached. Humanity would send a message to the Valith, using the same frequencies they had employed during their initial broadcast. The transmission would include updates on Earth's progress since their departure, images of reconstruction efforts, acts of kindness, and collaborative projects aimed at solving global challenges. It would also express gratitude for the lessons learned and extend an invitation for further dialogue. The task of crafting the message fell to Ryan and Claire, who worked tirelessly to ensure it conveyed sincerity and respect. They included footage of children planting trees, scientists working in labs, and musicians performing concerts in war-torn regions. Each clip was chosen to highlight humanity's diversity and determination. At the end, a single sentence appeared on screen. "We are still learning, but we are willing to try." When the message was ready, it was broadcast across the stars, carried by powerful transmitters designed to reach even the farthest corners of space. There was no guarantee the Valith would respond, or that they were still watching, but humanity had to believe someone was listening. Weeks turned into months, and life on Earth continued to evolve. Efforts to rebuild gained momentum, fueled by a renewed sense of purpose. Cities scarred by battle were transformed into symbols of resilience, with murals depicting unity replacing crumbling walls. Schools introduced new curricula focused on interstellar relations, teaching students about the importance of empathy and diplomacy. Artists created works inspired by the encounter, blending human and alien motifs to imagine a shared future. Lieutenant Daniel Hayes returned to active duty, though his role had shifted. Instead of leading fleets into combat, he now oversaw training programs designed to prepare soldiers for nonviolent interactions with extraterrestrial life. His experiences during the conflict had left him deeply aware of the cost of war, and he was determined to prevent another tragedy. Emily supported him every step of the way, her work at NORAD focusing on early warning systems capable of detecting potential threats while minimizing escalation. For Ryan and Claire, the wait for a response from the Valith was agonizing. They monitored incoming signals constantly, searching for any sign of acknowledgement. Nights were spent staring at blank monitors, wondering if their message had fallen into the void. Yet neither gave up hope. They reminded themselves that patience was essential, especially when dealing with a species so vastly different from their own. Then, one quiet evening, something changed. A signal appeared on the radar, a faint pulse that grew stronger with each passing second. Claire's heart raced as she analyzed the data, confirming it matched the frequency used by the Valith. Within minutes, the entire facility buzzed with activity. Engineers scrambled to decode the transmission while security teams prepared for the worst. But when the message finally played, it was calm and measured. "You have shown us your truth," Zainara's voice echoed through the speakers. "And we have seen glimpses of your potential. We will observe longer, but know this. Your kind stands at a crossroads. Choose wisely, for the decisions you make will shape not only your fate but the fate of others." The room fell silent as the words sank in. It wasn't a declaration of peace, nor was it a threat. It was an acknowledgement, a recognition that humanity's journey was far from over. Ryan exhaled slowly, feeling a mixture of relief and resolve. Claire smiled faintly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. They had done all they could. The rest was up to humanity. In the days that followed, the message sparked widespread discussion. Some interpreted it as a challenge, urging humanity to prove itself worthy of trust. Others saw it as an opportunity to embrace change and strive for a better world. Regardless of interpretation, one thing was clear. The encounter with the Veilith had left an indelible mark on the collective consciousness. People looked to the stars with a mix of humility and determination, knowing they were part of something greater than themselves. Ryan wrote a final article summarizing the events, reflecting on the lessons learned and the road ahead. He ended with a simple statement: "We may never know what lies beyond the horizon, but we owe it to ourselves and to those who came before us to keep moving forward." As for Claire, she returned to her research, driven by a newfound sense of purpose. Her work became a cornerstone of humanity's efforts to prepare for future encounters, ensuring that knowledge and understanding would guide their actions. Together, she and Ryan had helped turn a moment of crisis into an opportunity for growth. Years later, when historians looked back on this chapter of human history, they spoke not of battleships or weapons, but of courage and curiosity. The story of the Veilith served as a reminder that even in the face of uncertainty, humanity could rise to meet the unknown, not with fear, but with hope. And somewhere among the stars, the Veilith watched, waiting to see what would come next.